The views and opinions expressed by our guests do not represent those of the podcast, Elson and I. These are the opinions and views of Donovan Gray.
Two of the most decorated clubs in English football. It is always a big deal with these. And Garnacho! That is off the very high.
Stream all 380 matches for just 90 kwacha on Showmax Premier League. Visit showmax.com to get started.
Dun 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 dun.
It's one of those episodes where you don't know what direction it's going to take.
No.
Or what life is going to pick up and give us on the way.
But you know
what I mean?
It is bound to be a pretty interesting episode.
Yes.
You know how do you realize how we got to get the guest that we do have today?
How much work did you put in this?
How much what?
Work was put into this.
Not a lot. But
Like 2 phone calls?
Oh, you mean getting him?
Yeah.
Nah, I know people, bro. I know people. But we were in the Patreons group.
Right.
And big shout out to Kyle. So we've got a Patreon that's working for Netflix now. See, we have got extremely smart followers. Dude, why are you acting like this is normal? That you know people who work for Netflix every day? Why aren't you impressed by this?
Because we already congratulated him. And
To him, not to everybody else.
yeah, congratulations to... What do we call the group again? Our WhatsApp group?
The Patreons group.
The Patreons
The
group.
guy's name is Kyle.
Oh, it's... I want to say TRK. I've always wondered what the name is.
Wait, let me make sure that his name is actually Kyle.
Anyway, as Elson does that, remember once again this episode is brought to you by Brothers and their amazing mocktails, the Brothers Mocktails. And we've got 4 flavors in that range. There's the mojito, there's the pina colada, there's the strawberry and lime, and then there's the Cosmo. Really beautiful stuff. If you haven't tried these, we're at the mall last week and we're talking to people about East Park Mall.
Yes,
we're talking to people about these drinks and the experiences they've had. Amazing reviews. For those who tasted it for the first time, they loved it. That's a beautiful thing.
One brother kept calling it mojito. We don't blame him. Well, I think we should start calling it mojito too.
Mojito.
Yeah.
Also brought to you by Showmax.
By Showmax.
Yeah.
So they have got the official launch this Thursday. So again, because we're family, how much things do we need to do for these people? So not only are we giving you free stuff from Brothers, but we're giving 9 of you the opportunity to join Kalenga and I and our good friends at Showmax this Thursday as Showmax officially launches.
Yes.
So one of the conditions, why is this fly bothering me?
You must
One
be
of the
smelling like
conditions-
shit.
One of the conditions is that you need to have a Showmax account.
That's it.
That's one of the conditions.
How many are we giving out again?
9.
So 9 of you will actually be with us at the launch this Thursday. And subscribe now.
At a
much.
beautiful hotel. Not the rooms. The actual
place.
Yes. So we will let you know how we're going to pick our winners. But like I said initially, one of the things is that you have to have an active Showmax subscription.
Yep.
And we are shooting from this incredible, amazing venue.
Agora. That's the whole place.
It's Agora,
yeah.
yes.
Africa Works.
Africa Works, precisely. So Africa Works, for people like Kaling and I who are entrepreneurs, is the one at Agora specifically is the largest co-working space in Lusaka. So if an up-and-coming entrepreneur, you don't have enough moolah to get a whole office, you're able to come to Africa Works. They'll give you an office. You've got access to boardrooms, training rooms. You have got a receptionist who will do your mail forwarding, take your messages, get internet, coffee. Imagine that.
And just fair warning, if you hear any noise in the background, there's construction works happening, so we might have a bit of disturbances, grinding and welding happening right now. In the meantime, Nelson, who's our guest today? Please do the honors.
So, I got to know about this man, and the conversation was really heated as our patrons were speaking about this guy. And they did mention how this was one of the biggest scandals they've ever listened to, they've ever heard. And I said, hey, I'm sold. So I made one call. I got his phone number, and I called you at 10 p.m. last night, right?
Correct.
Sorry for calling. Sorry.
Well, why are you waking up a gentleman at 10 p.m., bro?
Hey,
I was
listen.
awake. I was still
you're
awake.
awake, counting the money.
Not yet, but
Not
soon,
yet, okay.
hopefully.
All right.
So this gentleman, for some that might know him, for some that might not know him, at the end of this episode, I bet you'll all be going, yo, 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 yo. His name is Donovan Gray. And that's Ray.
Gray.
Gray. Gray.
Like
Gray.
the color gray.
The
Yes.
color, but with
Nice.
an A.
Right. It sounds like a
Like a
action
movie
movie
name, yeah.
character, right?
Remember the movie The Gray Man?
I do.
Yeah, that was a good
I
movie.
also remember 50 Shades of Grey. What was the guy? It was Grey
Christian
too, right?
Grey?
Christian
That
Grey.
was me. That was me.
Right.
With a little bit of photo editing
Right. Okay.
or video editing.
So we've got Donovan on the podcast, and I don't want to miss any detail. So take us back. I don't know if you want to start in, was it 2001 or 21 that this whole thing unraveled and you got arrested?
Yeah, so it unraveled in 2021, which is particularly referencing the illegal arrest or detention that was done at the time.
Okay, maybe we start from the beginning.
Take it a step back.
Right,
Okay.
let's take a step back.
Yeah.
So we get this from inception. How the whole project came about, what project you had, and right up until...
Absolutely. So the gist of the story is that I've always wanted to mechanize agriculture in Africa. I think that's something that's lacking in Africa. Africa has 60% of the world youth population. We have tons of arable land and rainwater, which could put a lot of unemployed people to work. And so in my plan, mechanizing agriculture was the answer to that, to creating mass employment across the continent. And I decided to start an assembly plant in Zambia, assembling trucks for commerce. No commerce can survive or be done without any transport, affordable transport. We were also manufacturing trailers for trucks and tractors, and we were meant to have started assembling tractors, and all those things together are a recipe for success for people who live in rural parts of Zambia, because transportation in most parts of Zambia, you don't have good roads, there's no rail lines that go into all these areas. So we started to sell trucks which were affordable in the hope that they would empower the most vulnerable Africans. But we got an investment license through Zambia Development Agency, which was signed by the Minister of Finance, which granted us special incentives that basically allowed us to import parts into the country duty-free, which we then assembled into complete vehicles. So our kits were called CKD kits, complete knockdown kits. That's what it's called in the assembly of motor vehicles. And not long after we started assembling, about a year, we ran into a problem with ZRA, because ZRA decided to unilaterally stop recognizing the incentives that were granted to my company by the Zambian government through the
Why
Ministry
is
of
that, though?
Finance.
Because initially when you were importing, it was duty-free, right?
That's correct.
And this ran for a year?
So this ran for about a year. And so I remember I was in South America at the time, and I got a call from my office here in Lusaka. It was probably end of November. They notified me that ZRA refused to allow the trucks that were transporting containers with my parts in them into the country. So my containers were marooned at the Chirundu border post for about 2 months. And ZRA, no matter how many times we brought it to their attention, that we had to pay detention charges to the transporters who were transporting our goods, they had no interest in even allowing us to bring those containers to Lusaka and having them offloaded in Lusaka, so that we could stop incurring those detention charges. So in essence, ZRA created a situation where on a daily basis, hundreds of thousands of dollars accumulated, which ended up turning into millions of dollars, just because someone at ZRA felt like he was the king and didn't feel like he could be held to account, you know?
But Donovan, in how you're explaining this, you're not really saying why a year into this partnership, if I could call it, where you are able to bring in parts duty-free or tax-free, why they suddenly stopped and said you now need... Because from my understanding, you are bringing in vehicles, like complete vehicles, but just broken down into parts, then you assemble them here.
Yeah, so when you say it like that, it it's a little misleading, and because this after going to court for as much time as I've gone to court, so we were bringing parts that we would assemble which would become vehicles. So we weren't importing vehicles which are broken down into parts. It's different under the law. How you describe that matters, you know. So we were importing parts which we then turned into vehicles once we assembled them. And so ZRA, everything started okay, and everything changed at some point. I'm not sure why. ZRA backtracked and basically said that they thought that the reason we were given those incentives was because we wanted to assemble trucks for use by ourselves, not for sale. But ZRA is not the entity, it's not the government entity that is responsible of doing that. You have the Zambia Development Agency, whose sole mandate is to bring investors into the country. And on behalf of the investors, Zambia Development Agency then proceeds to assist in processing your application. And the final go-ahead is given by the Minister of Finance. So there's no way in this that allows, this process allows ZRA to query any of this, because it's the government that was doing it, and ZRA is an entity of the government. So ZRA cannot go against the government. So this whole thing that ZRA did was illegal, you know, and that's why when we went to court, the court ruled in my favor. Not only did the court rule in my favor, the government itself came and testified in court in my favor, not because they were doing me a favor, but because they're the ones that gave the incentives, and their intention when they gave those incentives was very clear. It was well known to everyone, is that we would import parts into the country and turn those parts into vehicles.
So when they then stopped this, what reason did they give?
So initially, they just refused to, because I had to bulldoze the process. I didn't listen to, after 2 or 3 months, I unilaterally decided to offload those containers and start to assemble the trucks. During that entire process, ZRA wasn't a part of it, because from their standpoint, they were still fighting this. So had I not used my initiative to go ahead and forcefully start to assemble the vehicles, we would have still been discussing it till today, you know. And so I attribute that to the simple fact that people up there at the time were jealous, and they did not want to see a young Zambian doing well, and so they sabotaged the entire project.
So the whole issue was assembling a vehicle versus manufacturing. a
That's
vehicle,
correct.
right?
Yes.
Okay.
So they then stopped this because they said, because you still haven't given me a reason that they then gave to stop the import.
So they would just say they're investigating it. So for a long time they were investigating
Wait,
it.
how long was it?
Maybe 2 years.
2 years.
Yeah, I mean, this thing, it got to a point where the ex-commissioner general of ZRA, Mr. Berlin Misiska, got cited for contempt of court. He almost went to prison because even though we would get judgments from court, the ex-commissioner general would not honor the court judgments or court orders, you know. So there's been malice in this thing from inception. So that malice started with Berlin Misiska. It went through to Kingsley Chanda, and now it's with Dingani Banda, the current Commissioner General of ZRA.
I don't know why there's so much sabotage today.
I know, right? Grinders, ambulances, and
now
alarm
car
systems.
alarm.
The people
So
probably
wait,
know
the
the
issue is still
interviews
in
happening.
court? What are you saying?
No, the issue is done. He won.
No, he's saying it's passed it on to the current ZRA Director General, right?
No, I'm talking about the malice, the intention.
malice.
Yeah, the bad intent.
Oh, right.
Yes.
Wow. So you're still having issues with ZRA as we speak.
Interestingly, when when governments changed in Zambia, the new current Commissioner General, who was the new Commissioner General at the time, got sworn in. And he was actually someone I knew because during that time I was actually fighting ZRA. He was one of the commissioners who had to sign documents based on court orders, right? So I'm not sure if it's his malice or his negativity toward me stems from that time because they were forced to sign these documents through court orders. They never did it because they wanted to issue the certificates that I required to be able to sell my trucks. And so also having the Commissioner General at the time cited for contempt of court probably left a bad taste in his mouth. And so I don't feel that I'm getting a fair treatment from Dingani Banda. And I'll tell you why. When he first got sworn into that position, I attempted to reach out to him. I called him. He didn't answer my call. He texted me back instead. And he basically
did
said...
he know it was you calling?
He did, yeah, he did. I introduced myself. And he said, can you please send me an email? I've been advised that this matter is in court. So I wrote back to him through an email advising him that the same legal officer that advised him that the matter was in court was involved in an $8 million fraud/theft from ZRA, which was meant to be paid to my company, but that his predecessor had stolen this money in conjunction with the legal officer and some other gentleman by the name of Shawi Fawaz. The Commissioner General at that stage...
Wait, Shawi Fawaz from Kitwe?
That's correct, yes. So the
You know him?
Yeah, and this episode just got scary for me.
What, did he give you some money as well?
No, go on.
Dingani Banda at that stage had information of a crime that was committed at an organization he had just taken over. And he didn't feel the need to see me to understand what had happened. Instead, he hid behind his legal offices. It was only after 9 months that he agreed to see me because someone had whispered in his ear that this thing was becoming a problem. So then he invited me and my lawyer over to ZRA. He was with two people from his legal team. And I made my presentation to him. I explained to him that I had spent over $150,000 on investigating what had happened to that money and that I knew where the criminals that had stolen the money had obtained material or it's similar to what's on the Black Mountain in Kitwe. So it's basically a slag dump. So these guys went to Congo and bought a material from a slag dump in Congo, which they brought to Zambia and started to process. Now, we knew where that material was at the time. Had Dingani acted at that time when I gave him that information, because another thing is ZRA is the only entity in the country which the Commissioner General can seize assets or property without going to court to get a court order. So he's got the statutory powers to have signed that right there and then, or after I'd left his office, to seize the goods that I was mentioning, so that the government didn't lose and they would recover the $8 million. But he opted not to heed my advice, and instead got a lawyer, an out-of-house lawyer, who wrote to my lawyer and said that any further correspondence should be done through his office.
But then again, it's just purely based off what you have just said, it is a little difficult to have an institution like ZRA go and seize something at the back of a private citizen saying, oh, hey, so I know Kalenga did A, B, C, and D. They'll still need to investigate in order for them to reach that conclusion as well, no?
So at that stage, investigations had actually started with the police, and some of the people turned state witness that were involved in the crime. The whole thing here is that when these guys were committing this crime, they didn't expect government to change. And when government changed, it meant that this story was going to come out. Because had government not changed, the same people who were suppressing this in conjunction with the criminals who committed this crime, there were some people in government, in the previous government, who were suppressing this. One of those people is Stephen Kampyongo, and he was the Minister of Home Affairs at that time. When I remember my lawyer writing he wrote so many letters to ZRA. Every 2 weeks he'd write a letter to ZRA demanding the money, because I'm sorry, I think I fast forwarded right now.
You did. There's a part that you skipped that I wanted you to backtrack on.
Okay,
which was you won the case initially, the initial case, when
Yes.
these guys had stopped you from bringing your material. I don't want to
Correct.
call them trucks.
Yes.
And you won the case.
Yes.
How much were you awarded?
So so when we filed in court, we asked for $54 million. So we were awarded the $54 million.
Did you get the 54 million though?
No, we were never interested in getting 54 million. So after we awarded the 54 million, we went to ZRA and said we've been awarded 54 million.
So ZRA was supposed to pay you this 54 million.
So if we had carried on fighting this to the Supreme Court,
Right.
that would have been the judgment. It wouldn't have changed. And the reason I say that is because the Zambian government was testifying on our behalf against ZRA. So,
Oh, right.
so it was a slam dunk.
Okay.
And so ZRA was like, okay, we want to settle this thing, but obviously we can't pay 54 million. What do we do? So we recommended that it go before an independent process, which went through a court-appointed registrar. And he came up with a figure of 27 million plus. And so ZRA was like, okay, we still can't pay 27 million. And I said, listen, based on my calculations, with everything that's happened, with regard to the expenses that we've incurred, loss of business and everything else, we would be happy to walk away with, I think at the time it was 18 million. And ZRA counted
And these are dollars we're talking about, right?
Dollars.
Yes. And so ZRA counted with 16 million, which we accepted. And we signed, we had a consent order signed by a High Court judge. So based on whatever agreement we'd made with ZRA, it was sealed by the judge's signature in the High Court. And so once we had that agreement, ZRA was meant to pay us on a certain date. Before that date came up, about a week before that date came up, I got a phone call. I was in the United States at the time, and I got a phone call from the same gentleman, Shawi Fawaz.
Right. And you look alike.
I hope we don't. I was hoping I'm a little better looking than him.
Well, with a bit of a beard, you would look alike. Anyway, you got a call in the United States?
And so he basically added my lawyer to the call as well, because he knew my lawyer. And he basically proceeded to explain that he had a client that by the name of CCS Mining, I believe it's a Chinese company in the Copper Belt that is into mining, which were owed, just so happened to also be owed $16 million by ZRA. But ZRA owed them that money because they had VAT refunds that amounted to a whole amount of money. And so Shawi proceeded to explain that the guys at CCS Mining were willing to allow me to take their allocation, their $16 million, as opposed to mine, but that I had to pay them $1 million. And he explained that the reason that this was a good idea was because ZRA didn't have money to pay me. So I obviously rejected his offer.
Why?
Because I wasn't willing to pay anyone $1 million to take someone else's money, you know?
Right.
And so, to be honest, I also smelt a rat. I knew that something was wrong. Because here was this guy who was never involved in my stuff, all of a sudden, like, trying to insert himself in what was happening. So after I rejected that, he called me back the next day, and he proceeded to explain that the gentleman at CCS Mining said that they didn't need me to pay them $1 million. Instead, I should loan them $600,000, which they would pay back. And so, to me, why would someone who has $16 million be asking me for $600,000? Like, that doesn't make any sense, you know? So, automatically, I knew that this wasn't right, and I, again, politely rejected it. The next thing, he calls me back on a different day, and he says, well, listen, Kingsley Chanda has asked me to collect $1 million from you, and basically, if you don't pay, you're not going to get your money. And I was like, ask Kingsley to call me himself. And so Kingsley called me from a Canadian number, and he basically said, yes, whatever Shawi said is right. Arrange $1 million and pay. Shawi will tell you where to pay that money. So at that stage, I didn't say anything to Kingsley.
I'm not understanding this logic, and forgive me if I'm being extremely slow here. I pay you so that you pay me.
Correct.
Is that the logic that they're trying to employ here?
So Shawi and Kingsley had a cartel at ZRA. Kingsley, at the time, it was very difficult for all of these big companies to get their VAT refunds. ZRA owed hundreds of millions of dollars in VAT refunds. So what Kingsley used to do, he'd select a company that is owed $15 million or $20 million or even more and say, I can get that money out for you, but you have to pay a fee. But he was very smart. He never went to the affected companies himself for obvious reasons. So what he did is he partnered with Shawi for Shawi to go to those companies and say, hey, listen, I'm aware that ZRA owes you 20 million and it's very difficult to get that money, but for a fee, I can get that money out for you. So they ran that kind of cartel, you know, so they would deliberately not pay refunds so that they could keep repeating this. And so they had a cartel. And so anything that you wanted to happen out of ZRA, you basically had to give a kickback in order to get your stuff done, even though it was ZRA that owed you the money. Otherwise, you're not going to get your money. And companies depended on that money for their operational costs, you know. Otherwise, I'm sure many companies went under because of that in Zambia. But also some survived. And out of the ones that survived, they all had to pay to Caesar, they had to pay to Caesar what's due to Caesar. And Caesar in this case was Kingsley and Shawi.
Oh, not your maps?
Maybe, you never know. And so that's what happened.
There's a lot to dissect here.
I can keep explaining, but you might get lost. This is like a script from a movie.
Clearly, okay, so the $16 million
sounds like the Godfather
that you guys settled on, or you paid that.
So from the $16 million that was eventually agreed to through a consent agreement, which resulted in a consent judgment, $8 million was paid to my lawyer with the promise of the balance of the $8 million being paid a month later. However, within that month, legal proceedings were started in the Copperbelt by Shawi Fawaz, his two companies, unbeknownst to us, claiming that they had built an assembly plant for my company in Ndola, and that we had failed to pay them for building that assembly plant. And so they also, so when they filed these documents, they were meant to file to serve my company as well. So to pretend, they purportedly served my company by procuring a fake date stamp and stamping the court documents and putting a signature on there, claiming someone at my offices in Ndola had signed these court documents. In reality, I don't own any business or any property out of Lusaka. I've never owned any business or had any office in Ndola. So right off the back, that's fraud, you know. But all they needed that for was to take that to the judge, to show the judge that they had served me and that there was no response. They couldn't find me. They claimed I had run away. I'd gone to the United States, even though at that particular time I was in Lusaka. My offices in Lusaka were open. They could have served them on my offices in Lusaka. And beyond that, they also knew my lawyer. And they could have served my lawyer at any time. But they didn't. And so once they paid the 8 million, they went through that process within that month where they got a default judgment. After they got the default judgment, they proceeded to use that default judgment to get a garnishi, which was sanctioned by the same Kitwe High Court. And so first...
Sorry. What was decided in the default judgment?
The default judgment was that the money that was owed to my company by ZRA should be paid to these two companies that belong to Shawi Fawaz.
Wow.
The $8 million.
Correct. Yeah. So they made it come to just under, so maybe like 7,960 something. Maybe there was $40,000 left. But so they claimed just shy of what ZRA actually owed me.
And they got it.
They got it. They got paid just under $8 million. And the way they got paid that money, the way a garnishi works, if you owe me money, right? If you owe me money and I'm having a hard time collecting that money from you, and Alton owes you money, the way a garnishi works is I can go to court, alert the court that you owe me, you're not paying. Obviously, I have to have all the right paperwork. And I can tell the court that Alton owes you and that the court should instruct Alton to pay me instead. But in order for that to happen, I have to notify you when this process is happening. It can't happen without you being notified. Like, you need to know.
So the notification in this case is the fake documents.
Correct. So the reason they didn't want me to know any of this is because the entire case they started was fabricated. It was all a lie.
And
so
you
this
still haven't been
entire
able to
process
prove,
happened minus you knowing.
That's correct.
and you still haven't been able to prove that all this was just a fraud.
The police have proved it. The police investigated it. As a matter of fact, Morgan Mukwasa, who was part of this trio, he was the legal director of ZRA at the time this was all happening. It was his responsibility to serve us those documents. Sure. He is on record confessing to the police. There's an audio that's out. He's confessed to the police. And he's explained that Kingsley Chanda, who was his then boss, instructed him not to respond, not to serve my company any of those documents, and not to respond to any of the letters that my lawyer had written. It was only after President Hakainde Hichilema won the elections that Morgan Mukwasa felt compelled to call my lawyer and explain what happened, because he was afraid he'd get caught up in this whole thing. And he was saying, if I give you information, can you ensure that I'm protected and that nothing happens to me? And the truth is, I think that if he does cooperate with the authorities, I think that there's a possibility that he could get away, because even though he's involved in this, the main players in this is Shawi and Kingsley. And I know that I believe the president gave instructions a while ago that if all these people that have plundered, if they came forth and gave back what they plundered, the president basically gave them amnesty, so they don't go to prison as long as they return what they stole. And so this applies to Kingsley and Shawi, and I think that if they return what they stole, I think they would.
And they're returning this to you, not to the government, right?
No, they have to return it to the government. I would never accept any money from them.
Yeah, but that's your money.
It's not my money. My money is with ZRA. That money is for the government. It's for the country.
Okay.
So essentially, it's economic sabotage to the Zambian government. So it's the Zambian people that have lost. My money is still held with ZRA, because the way a garnishi proceeding works, is if I garnish you, the way I've explained it, garnishing your account using him.
Yeah.
So ZRA is hiding behind that fact. There's a law that says that the disgruntled party cannot come and complain or bring that up. And so the law is very clear. If people that are involved in the garnishee are committing a crime, it means they have not discharged their duty under that garnishee. So ZRA has not discharged its duty under that garnishee. Had this been not involved any officials from ZRA, then ZRA did serve us at the time when all this was happening, and it managed to go through and the funds were still paid to Mr. Fawaz, then I wouldn't have any recourse according to the law. But in this instance, this crime was masterminded by two of individuals from ZRA. One was the CEO, which is the Commissioner General. So he's basically responsible for the entire organization. And one was the Director Legal, who was responsible for everything legal at ZRA. So those two individuals essentially make up the Zambia Revenue Authority. And if they weren't acting in their capacity as employees of ZRA, they would have never been able to make this payment. So it's based on the fact that they acted as employees of ZRA that they were able to create this fraud. And based on that, ZRA is still liable to pay this money. So the other side have tried to reach out to me to do an out-of-court settlement. But if I accept any money from them, all the rumors that emanated from...
Which side is this?
Shawi and Kingsley.
Okay.
All of the rumors that emanated out of when this case started and officers came to my house to try and arrest me will not clear my name. And I'm here to clear my name. Shawi and Kingsley tried to make it seem like I got paid $16 million by ZRA, when in reality my company only got paid $8 million. And they stole the remaining $8 million. So there's a misconception, a huge misconception and misinformation campaign going on right now, trying to claim that my company got paid $16 million, when in fact we didn't, you know?
And I'm assuming...
Go ahead.
I'm assuming... This case started when?
It started in 2021.
So for 3 years, your business has not been able to flow normally, has it?
So my business had to shut down. I shut that business down.
Completely?
I mean, I had I used to hold the brand agency for a brand called FAW. Those are the trucks I used to assemble.
FAW.
So I used to assemble those trucks here. But the way it works with brands is you have to commit to buying a certain amount of units on an annual basis. If you don't reach that quota or fill that quota, they revoke age brand from you. And so that's exactly what happened in my case. Because I was unable to
fill your end of the...
Yes, because I was unable to sell vehicles, it meant I couldn't import any more vehicles. So I fell afoul of the rules of the contract for me to own that agency, you know. So my business it shut down in 2015, because I used to pay my employees. I had over 100 employees. I paid all my employees out of my pocket. For a long time, thinking this matter would get resolved. But after a while, you realize that people weren't interested in resolving this matter. They were interested in destroying my business. And so the only solution, I couldn't afford to pay my staff anymore. And so I shut the business down, you know.
So what are you doing now?
Right now I'm based in the United States. I have a construction company there. I'm also partner with African governments, working with carbon credits. So we basically process forests we monetize forests and sell the oxygen.
Sounds like big money, man. So you're still a millionaire.
Well, it's debatable, I guess.
It's not
Either you
debatable.
are or you're not. Either you are or you aren't. That's it.
Man,
Nothing to debate there.
this is
And if you're dealing with African governments, I'm sure the bag is really big.
yeah.
Well, I never actually look at it like that. I look at it more from a perspective
That's a
of
very millionaire type of answer.
what can I do for Africa, you know?
Right.
And so everything I do, we have interest in a few different African countries. We develop rural areas. We build schools, we build roads, we build hospitals. We empower them. We make sure that people have power so that they don't keep chopping trees. We make sure that they have running water. So this is all part of what we do. So everything I do has a national aspect to it. Everything I do as a business has a national aspect to it. And it benefits the most vulnerable in society, you know. And so that's the same thing I was trying to do with my vehicles. Is I was trying to empower the most vulnerable Africans through ways which we believed would uplift them out of poverty. So yeah, in a nutshell, that's what I do.
Let's fast forward. I'm trying to, and this is a pretty interesting story. You got arrested for espionage.
I got arrested for espionage many years ago.
James Bond. What's going on here? Christian Grey, Donovan Gray, James Bond.
Yes, I got arrested.
Espionage.
I'm just Donovan Gray, yeah. So basically, a friend of mine had used to send fuel to the Central African Republic out of South Africa. He used to use a Russian Antonov plane to transport his fuel. And obviously, Central African Republic, South Africa, you'll fly over Zambia, you know, Zambian airspace. At the time that this happened, the Angolan government accused the Zambian government of Frederick Chilua at the time of gun running. They said he was supplying Savimbi with arms in Angola. The Zambian government denied this, obviously. The Angolan government reported this to the United Nations. And at the time, there was a bombing that happened in Northmead. The Angolan government actually bombed Zambia in Northmead. When all this was happening, I was in the United States. I wasn't even in Zambia. And so one day, my friend's plane was flying back to South Africa, and it was forced to land in Zambia. The charge that, so they kept the pilots here. There was 11 Ukrainian pilots on that plane. And the government wouldn't explain to the pilots and the captain why they grounded this plane. And so the pilots had been in Zambia for 30 days without the government explaining to them what happened. At that time, I happened to fly back to Zambia, and my friend called me up and he was like, Donovan, listen, I'm not sure what's going on in Zambia with my plane, but the Zambian government is not giving my guys clearance to fly. Could you please rent a house, because we're not sure how this is going to last. Could you please rent a house and move my pilots out of the Holiday Inn hotel, because it's proving to be very expensive to be paying for 11 people on a daily basis, including lunch and whatever. And I agreed to that. So when I came back to Zambia, I went to Holiday Inn, settled the bill for these pilots, and I arranged to pick them up in the evening. When I went to pick them up in the evening, one of the vehicles I had at the time was a microbus, a Caravel, and so it had enough space for me to seat all 11 pilots. So as we walked out of Holiday Inn, I had parked right in the middle of Holiday Inn at the roundabout, so right in front of the entrance, the door, main entrance. And as I put my hand on my door handle, I could hear people behind me saying, "Hey, hands up, freeze," you know. So I turned around and I looked at that little patch of grass in front of Holiday Inn, and there must have been like 150 commandos laying on the grass with AK-47s pointed at my head. And these were the guys with like the sack outfits. Do you know those? Like like they were on a mission or something, you know? And so, I looked around to see who else they could be pointing these guns to, because it didn't even occur to me that these guys were pointing those guns at me. And so they're obviously all walking toward me, pointing their AK-47s at my head. I quickly realized there was a problem. So the cops came and they're like, can you get in your vehicle? Can you get in your vehicle? I think one of them jumped in our vehicle, and they basically sandwiched my vehicle. We had some in front of me and some behind me, and they forced me to drive to Force Headquarters. When we got to Force Headquarters, I could overhear. They didn't realize I was a Zambian. They thought I was a Ukrainian. And so I could hear one of the officers who was in charge at the time speaking in Bemba or Nyanja, I don't recall at the time, explaining to the then president, Frederick Chilua, that they had apprehended us. And so none of this made sense. I didn't understand what was going on. When we were on our way to the police station, I quickly texted a friend of mine who happened to be a lawyer, and I explained to them what was happening and that I didn't know. It seemed very sinister, the way the whole thing was done. And they quickly came to force headquarters where they found me. The police couldn't charge us. They kept moving. They didn't officially arrest me. They just kept moving me from police post to police post every night. I actually won a habeas corpus case against them because they were unable to put a charge on me. And then eventually they turned around and said that we had flown over an area called Papa 4. I believe Papa 4 is an area that's probably like a military base or something. I'm not very sure what it is. So I proceeded to let them know that their charges didn't make sense because on the date that they claimed I flew over Papa 4 in this plane, I wasn't even in Africa. I was in the United States. And so those charges couldn't stick onto me. But they eventually, when they charged us, they kept me at Lusaka remand for 30 days as a political prisoner. It was only after the Angolan government dropped charges at the United Nations that the Zambian government dropped charges against me and those 11 Ukrainians. So to put this on record, there was never any arms on that plane. That plane was carrying fuel to Bangui in the Central African Republic. There was a plane, which I am aware of, that was transporting arms to Angola, but we had nothing to do with that plane. Word on the street at the time was that our local, some bad actors in our Zambian government are the ones who were facilitating the process. So they essentially just used us as scapegoats to escape this.
Donovan,
Sleight of hand, eh?
I beg your pardon?
Sleight of hand.
Yeah,
While they cause this confusion, the real crime is actually happening elsewhere.
that's correct.
Wow. You're saying?
either you're the unluckiest person on earth or there's a lot of information you're leaving out. Because how can all this just happen to you? I've not had a quarter of that much drama happen to me in my entire life.
Yeah, drama and I are friends, you know. And I know all this sounds far-fetched. It sounds like a movie, right? It all sounds far-fetched, but that's the reality of it. And I'm not sure why those things happen to me. I don't think anything happens in a vacuum.
I heard a different story. I just need to read this, where there was a standoff with the police and you barricaded yourself in a house or something like that. Am I tripping? Did I read that?
So that goes back to the story with regard to the $8 million. So what happened was...
Donovan, how did you leave this? Yes, tell us about that.
So that goes back to the $8 million.
Yeah.
So what actually happened was, when I came back to Zambia, when I realized what had happened, when I initiated the police investigation into the matter, I wrote a letter to the Inspector General of Police. In that letter, I explained what had happened with regard to ZRA, and I explained that there was fraud committed, but I also explained that the people I was fighting also initiated a court case around that same time, a police case around that same time in Kitwe. And I explained to him that the police from Kitwe have never questioned me, they never investigated me, but they had come up with a police report. So how do you come up with a police report when you've never investigated me, when you've never questioned me? It's impossible for you to come up with a police report. And so my request to the Inspector General of Police at the time was for him to consolidate the case that I started in Lusaka together with the case that Shawi Fawaz started in Kitwe, and get an independent team to then start to investigate that. So essentially cut me out and cut Shawi out and have an independent investigation. So when I wrote that letter, it was put at the bottom of the file at the police station. And as soon as Shawi wrote another letter saying that I had committed fraud, he created trumped-up charges saying that I had committed fraud in the Copper Belt. That one was at the top, and that's the case that started to get investigated. Unbeknownst to me, around 8 p.m. I was at home. I could hear people hooting at my gate. At that time, I would get death threats on a daily basis that if I didn't leave Zambia, I would be murdered. There was all sorts of threats coming my way. My properties were going to be seized by so-and-so, and basically trying to intimidate me for me to leave. And so at that time, I remember calling my lawyer, who got in touch with the authorities, explaining that the police were at my house, outside my gate, and I think an agreement was reached at that time between my lawyer and the powers that be up in the police force, that we would report to force headquarters the next day at 9 a.m. in the morning. To my surprise, at around 4 a.m. in the morning, I heard my gate being broken. And so to me, knowing that my life was in danger, I'd also been told at the time that there was a group of unscrupulous police officers who were going to come and try and arrest me and take me to the Copper Belt and murder me on the way, claiming I tried to run away. And so to me, this was it. Like, what was happening at that moment was these unscrupulous police officers coming to my house to illegally apprehend me, try and make it look like I was a criminal, so that when they did murder me, they could justify the act that they murdered me by what had been printed on social media earlier that day. And so what happened was, when they broke into my house, I didn't resist arrest. There was no gun involved. I didn't barricade myself behind any door. I didn't point my gun at anyone or fire any shots. As a matter of fact, my gun was in my drawer in my bedroom. But all these stories were fabricated to create a narrative which the public would know when I was murdered. And so I was driven to Kabwata police station after I was apprehended at my house. I was put in the back of a Toyota Land Cruiser police pickup. They were forced me to lay down and face the floor. They took pictures of me in that position and sent them to Shawi, and Shawi disseminated them. So obviously those police officers were on Shawi's payroll. And I'm not saying this because I'm making the accusation. I'm saying this because it was investigated, and that police officer's phone was found with messages between him and Shawi Fawaz, where the police officer was thanking Shawi for payments he made, various payments that he had made, one of which was there was courses that this officer was doing at college, and Shawi was paying for them. And he's the same officer that purportedly prepared the fraudulent police report from Kitwe, which, by the way, was debunked by the investigation that was done by force headquarters. There's police reports to that effect stating that all the accusations made against me were false, and that there was a crime committed at ZRA, and it basically implicated the people that I've spoken about. And so there was never, ever a situation where I was barricaded in a house. I just didn't open the door because my life had been threatened. And I mean, if there was an agreement for me to report to force headquarters at 9 in the morning, why is this group of policemen trying to break into my house at 4 in the morning? I mean, that's as sinister as it gets. And I believed the stories that were circulating that they were trying to murder me, you know? So, in essence, I'm lucky to be alive. Had that gone through, I'm very confident that they would have murdered me on the way to the Copper Belt.
Maybe I drifted off at some point. I'm trying to figure out why exactly you were being arrested in the first place.
So that's a good question. So what had happened was Shawi actually used to be a client of mine. He bought trucks from me. And so what he turned around and did is he turned around and said, I fabricated. So what he was trying to do is he was trying, if I go ahead with my claim against him, he was trying to create another case where he has a claim against me. So it was tit for tat. So as long as Donovan pushes for the police to, on this case, he would now turn around and force the police to push to arrest me on a fabricated case that he created.
Yeah, but what
he
case
just
did you have
created it out
against
of
him?
thin air.
What case did you have against him?
So he committed the fraud at ZRA.
So what case did he then have against you?
He said I created forged documents from his company.
I think you and I are too broke to understand this, Kalenga.
If I follow this story closely, shall we lace charges against you because of that 8 million you refused to accept a 1 million for? It stems from that, right?
No. So it's part of that case.
Part of it, okay.
But so he claims I forged documents from his company. The only time he started that case is after I started the fraudulent case in Lusaka. So remember, like, the money
You
was paid out.
accused him of fraud and he's accusing you of fraud.
Exactly. So it's a common tactic criminals use, you know. So he basically.
You realize you also just called yourself a criminal there.
No, but I'm the original. I'm the original complainant, right? Like, there's people who punch you, and when you go to the police to report that they've punched you, they also claim you punched them. So then you have two cases. So the only way the cases end is for one of the people to say, "Well, I dropped charges." So that's technically what they were doing, you know.
Right.
So I'm the complainant in this thing. So starting parallel court cases or police cases is a thing
slow down
that
the original case.
Correct. It muddies the waters, so to speak. And so that is how the issue of the police arresting me came about. So they never arrested me because I did something wrong. They arrested me because of allegations that were made by Shawi, which have been proven to be a lie.
But Donovan, you had similar charges against him. Was he arrested?
He's never been arrested.
So how is it that when he's made similar allegations against you, they break into your house and they arrest you? It's almost exactly the same kind of...
Yeah, but remember he mentioned there's cops on the payroll in this story.
No, I get that.
Yeah.
So are you saying he didn't get arrested because you did not have cops on your payroll?
That is absolutely right. He was...
Donovan, a man of your caliber, I don't quite believe that, man. I'm sure you have a connection somewhere
but
high up.
But I don't do anything dirty, so I don't need to pay anyone. If I did dirty stuff, absolutely I would have dirty cops.
Does anything ever happen in your life that you don't suspect foul play? I've heard stories of your lawyer getting into is it an accident?
Yes, he had a...
Lawyer was in an accident.
Correct.
Was that foul play or just...
So he's very confident that, because he says his accident didn't make sense. He says he had a tire blowout and his vehicle rolled several times.
Right.
And he basically attributed that to that. I mean, after this whole thing, he by himself had so many threats against his life. He all of a sudden had to put cameras at his house, security cameras. He had to buy a gun. He had to start taking precautions that he never thought existed before he handled my case, you know. And so his life changed as well. But he was based in Zambia. I wasn't. I was in the United States. So even though at the time when this started, even though accusations were made against me, they couldn't touch me. I was sitting in the United States, whereas my lawyer was based in Lusaka. And so it got to a point where my lawyer was like, Donovan, I can't represent you anymore. I'm fearful of my life. And I think until the government changes, I don't think you should push this because I think I'm going to get murdered.
So this was before 2021?
This was before 2021.
Do you feel safe now when you're in Zambia?
So I don't feel safe, but I've resigned to the fact that anything can happen on any given day. I mean, if I drive out of here, or if someone comes right now and shoots me in my head, this is destiny. This is what was meant to happen. And if this is how I'm meant to die, this is how I'm
why
meant to
aren't you
die.
feeling safe at this point?
Can I say my punchline? Before you ask your sensible questions? We need to get life insurance.
You do, absolutely.
You and I.
With Sandland, right?
Add me as a beneficiary, though. Just in case I make it.
What was the sensible question again?
I have no
something
idea.
about your... Like, are these
Do I feel safe now?
Do you feel safe now? Yeah, after 2021.
So it's not that I feel safe, but I mean, you can't go around living your life fearful. You know what I mean? Like, it means that I've robbed my life from you. So, for no one knows how long I'm going to live. Only God knows that. But for as long as I live, I'm not going to live in fear, you know, because someone stole and I must be afraid to stand up to a bully. There's a time for everything, right? Like, there was a time when they got away with it, and there's a time where they have to be held to account, and that time for them to be held to account is now. And I can almost certainly guarantee you, these guys have done this to many, many, many people. It's not just me. So I'm hoping that I'm the person that encourages all those other disgruntled people to come out and talk about what happened to them, and to know that they don't need to be afraid, and that no matter what sort of gangsters these guys are, even if they kill you, justice will still be served. You know what I mean? Like, do you just cower and hide if something like this happens?
Yeah, I would.
You would?
After this episode, I am.
In a fetal position too.
So you guys clearly haven't been to South Africa.
I lived in South Africa.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
So you should be tough tested by now.
No, well, to a certain extent, there's levels to this shit, bro.
So you lived in the good neighborhoods of South Africa.
I still do. I know when
And there's
not
no
to
cops
go.
pick him up at 4 a.m. So
Yeah.
You're lucky. You're lucky. Hopefully it won't happen after today.
he's a very
you know?
petty criminal. He's a pickpocket. Yeah.
He's a
Who,
petty
me?
criminal.
Yeah, petty thief.
Don't call me a criminal.
Donovan, what's your story? I'm now more curious to find out more about you. Like, you talk about living in America now. Where does your story begin? Who's Donovan Gray?
Well, Donovan Gray is just a Zambian guy who thought he could make a difference, who recognized where the holes were in the development of Zambia.
But where does your story begin?
What do you mean?
I want to understand your upbringing. I'm trying to understand your mindset, where you are today and where it came from.
So, I mean, I was born in Zambia. I'm a Zambian. I was born in Livingston. I lived in Zambia till I was about 13, and then I moved to Saudi Arabia. I lived in Saudi Arabia.
Wow, Saudi.
I moved to Saudi Arabia for about 2 years. I was learning Arabic. And after 2 years, I moved to London. I lived in London for a while. And
What took you to Saudi Arabia?
I'm curious. You just got moved there to learn Arabic and that's it.
No, I used to have a friend who was part of the royal family in Saudi Arabia.
Jesus, who is this dude? Bruh.
You see how sensible my question was? Who are you?
And so his family invited me to visit him in Saudi
The
Arabia.
royal family is the one that invited you.
So he was from the royal family.
And
this
his
guy.
family invited you.
And his family...
For 2 years you were in the palace.
He invited me to go to Saudi Arabia. So one day I got a call from the embassy here, and they were like, do you know so-and-so? And I was like, yes. And they were like, well, he says that you and him had a discussion once that if you ever wanted to go to Saudi Arabia, you could go to Saudi Arabia. Would you like to go? And I was like, sure. And so when I went there, I met his family, and his family were like, listen, you're more than welcome to stay here. We'll pay for you to go to get educated if you want. And they were very gracious to me. So I agreed. I thought it would be a good experience. I always believed that exposure was one of the best ways to be successful in life. So I'd never shun an opportunity to get exposure, to travel or whatever. And so when I got there, it turned out he was part of the royal family. I didn't know that when he was in Zambia. It was a secret. And his family were very gracious, and they offered to pay for everything for me.
How old were you at
I
this
was
point?
very young. I must have been 14, maybe 15.
And you were able to make a decision to live in another country on your own.
Yes, that's correct.
And your
This
parents,
man's life is a movie.
Were your parents here?
They were. My parents were here. They were very liberal. They allowed me to do what I wanted to do, as long as it made sense. And I mean, it's not like, I was still going to school there, you know?
Right.
And so after 2 years, I couldn't handle it. It's a very different society. It was a very closed society at the time. So, as a young man, 14 years old, I wasn't allowed to interact with any women. And I'm not saying this is the basis of why I left, but for me, it was very unnatural to live there for 2 years and
sure
only
you would have
speak to
lifted a
men.
day?
And only speak to men on a daily basis.
Are you sure they didn't gift you a virgin upon arrival?
No, there was nothing like that. So I ended up leaving. I went to London. I stayed in London for, I think, a year and a half, maybe 2.
They paid for this as well?
So does she look
for my
familiar?
trip to London. Her outfit does. How are you?
You went to Saudi Arabia when you were 14. You did
Around
2
there,
years there.
14.
You were still a teen when you moved to London.
I was.
They paid for that as well.
Just for my move. Everything else I did
Who
there.
was in London that you lived in?
I have a whole bunch of relatives who live in London.
Explains a lot. Because I'm wondering what a 16-year-old is doing in London.
Yeah, no, I have relatives who are based there.
Okay.
So at that time, I already knew I wanted to come back to Zambia, and I knew what I wanted to do. So I dropped out of school to come back to Zambia to start a business of selling second-hand trucks, because you could not buy a second-hand truck in Zambia. And for you to buy a truck in Zambia, you had to go to Toyota Zambia. The prices were exorbitantly high. No Zambians could afford that. It was only the UN or the government. At the time, there was no even middle-class Zambians, so those were luxuries to Zambians. And so at that time, I knew I wanted to come back, set up a place to start selling used trucks, which I used to import from the US.
Which place was this?
From the UK. I've had several companies over the years. But the last one that I had, which one was it that was doing that? I've had so many, even till now, on different businesses. So it's a little
So
confusing.
you inspired the truck sellers near Nipa there, yeah?
All of the ones in Zambia.
Because I know they get their trucks from the UK as well.
Yeah, so I was basically the first Zambian to start doing that. So I used to do that out of the UK and out of the United States. So I credit myself with starting to import affordable vehicles in Zambia, into Zambia. And so, in a nutshell, that's who I am. I'm just a person who thought that I could make a positive contribution to Zambia based on the fact that there was things that were lacking in Zambia that could significantly improve the Zambian economy. Which if it was given to the population, And so I went from selling secondhand trucks to then deciding, because it got to a point where if you were my client and you came to me and said, Donovan, I need 20 of these type of trucks, it got to a point where once everyone started to do it in Africa, it was very difficult for me to maintain the same standard of vehicle that I would give you. And so 7 would be good and 3 would be bad. And so I got tired of I didn't want to ruin my reputation to my customers. And at that stage, I decided I was going to start selling brand new vehicles. And I decided to fly to China. I visited every Chinese vehicle manufacturer at the time that manufactured vehicles. And I settled on one that was called FAW after visiting all of their plants and listening to the stories behind how they started, what their future plans were. I chose a company that I thought aligned with what I was trying to do in Zambia, not only Zambia, but Africa. And so that's how I started assembling FAW trucks in Zambia.
Up until this scandal.
Up until the scandal happened. And right now I'm primarily focused on what's happening in the US and in the other African countries that we're working with.
So back to Saudi Arabia. So do you know Mohammed bin Salman?
Not personally, no.
Ever met him when you were there?
No.
Is that the king?
He will be. He's the crown prince.
He's the crown prince, the one that runs things there right now.
I still have lots of very good friends there,
Okay.
who, they're in strategic positions around MBS, bin Salman.
Yeah, that's his nickname.
And I'm actually thinking of going to start assembling vehicles or manufacturing vehicles in
Saudi Arabia.
Yes. So we're seriously considering that, because what happened was after we had this problem with ZRA and after we lost that license, to continue assembling FAW trucks. When we lost that agency, I then decided to design and engineer my own brand of vehicles. So we've engineered and designed our own brand of vehicles, and all we need to do is start assembling them to start selling them. So we need a destination, or we need an investment place where we can do this. And to be honest, after what happened to me with regard to ZRA. I had offers from the South African government to do this in South Africa. I've had offers from countries in West Africa, from Kenya. I've had a whole bunch of offers. I don't think I'm comfortable doing this in any African country because every time the government changes in unfortunately in our African countries, the new government that comes in has enough power to derail what you're doing. And I've wasted so many good years of my life fighting ZRA. I don't have any intentions of fighting any other ZRAs in whichever country they may be in, you know? And so my desire to do this in Zambia is gone. I don't feel like Zambia is a safe destination to do it because, yes, maybe today we have a president who is pro-business. We might not have a president tomorrow that's pro-business, and all those equal to disaster for a business, you know? And so that's basically, in a nutshell, that's basically what it is. I'm not sure if I've answered your question about who I am.
You have quite actually extensively. And just to dispel some rumors, there's rumors of you bringing electric vehicles to Zambia on a large scale. Are these rumors true?
No. So I am not looking at doing anything in Zambia that requires significant investment on the ground, apart from our carbon credit projects that we're doing. And it's a pity because I considered myself very Pan-African, very pro-Zambia. In fact, my friends and I are very good friends in Zambia who were of the idea that Zambia needed a change in government when Edgar Lungu was president because he was selling the country to the Chinese. And I have no problem for the Chinese to come to Zambia and invest, or any other nationality or race to come to Zambia and invest. But do things that don't break the law, and don't do things that ensure that your business gets more support from politicians than a Zambian who's doing the exact same business.
I'll tell you something, Donovan. Kaling and I had a lady on this podcast that had been in prison. So she told her story about all the horrible things that happened to her while she was in prison. She stole money. She was sentenced to, how long was it?
I think she was given 3 years and pardoned after 1 or something like that.
Right. So she came on the podcast and say what her experience was.
Right.
When we then realized how far-reaching this podcast is a couple of days after that episode aired. You're the one that got the call, right?
Which one is this?
From the Minister of Justice.
Oh, yeah, from his team, yeah.
Yeah, so we got a call from the Minister of Justice, and they said, yeah, no, we were watching your podcast. And we want to come on to sort of clarify what that lady that came on your podcast said. I say all this to say, you never know who's watching this, all right? And there's been so much that you have said, that you've alleged. If there's anything that could change, or that you would want anybody, or any kind of, if the course is to be corrected, who would it be and what would it be?
So are you asking specifically with regard to my case, or are you talking in general?
No, your case.
So obviously here
and then generally.
Yeah. So obviously here the problem is ZRA. They're the ones who caused the problem. The genesis of this problem starts with ZRA, and it has continued with ZRA. And ZRA needs to be held accountable. The people that were making these decisions need to be held accountable. And look, as a Zambian, I'm outraged that the government has to spend $16 million on compensating for the irresponsible actions of one individual or a couple of individuals. A handful of individuals is costing the government $16 million that I know of. I don't even want to think about what they're costing the government of what I don't know of, what I don't have information to. And so a fundal rethought has to be done with regard to how ZRA is managed and run. And I mean, if you go to ZRA and try and see anyone there, it's so difficult to see anyone there. I mean, how can you get the truth if people aren't allowed to get to you? You know, and I get it. If you're Dingani Banda and you're the Commissioner General of ZRA, you're not just going to speak to just anyone. There's going to be many people who have problems who might want to come to you and try and get you to sort them out, to explain that maybe their taxes were too high, or maybe that they have a vehicle at the border and the duty that they're being charged is a high amount. I get that. And so, to some extent, he needs to be protected. But when someone comes with an allegation saying that people within the organization you run have fraudulently stolen $8 million, and those people, one of them was your predecessor, I would immediately call that person in and investigate the matter. Dingani has never done any of that. He's never initiated an investigation into what happened. And he keeps claiming, I know that this matter was in Parliament a couple of days ago. In Parliament, from what I read in the newspaper, Dingani essentially was saying that this story is very sensitive and it cannot be debated in public. My question to him is, what about this story cannot be debated in public? The public needs to know what happened. It is not true that it is a sensitive story, but it's not true that this story cannot be debated in public. The police investigated it. For the most part, the police released their investigation reports. ZRA is aware of exactly what the police reports say. They were advised as soon as the police had them. The court case in Kitwe that started this whole process of the garnishi was set aside. And so, according to the law, as soon as the garnishi was set aside and the default judgment, ZRA was meant to have claimed that $8 million back from Shawi and Kingsley. But till today, as far as I'm concerned, or as far as I know, ZRA has never demanded for that money back. That's number one. Number two, when ZRA makes a payment, as soon as someone invoices, I'm sure you guys know this, as soon as you invoice someone, within 21 days, regardless of whether the person has paid you, you have to pay your VAT.
Yep.
ZRA was never paid any VAT on that $8 million. It never happened. And I mean, I would be very happy for ZRA and the police to come on your podcast and explain their side of the story. You know, I would love to hear that. So by all means, invite them. Invite Dingani Banda to come and explain why he's lying to the nation about this matter.
And there were sponsors here. They called me saying they want to sponsor more episodes again. Let's hope that will happen.
Donovan, your life is a movie, man. You should write a book. I hope you have.
Of writing. That's what everyone says.
Yeah.
Are you going to write a book?
I don't have any plans to do that at this stage.
You might die soon, Brad. TikTok.
Can we at least make a YouTube documentary about your life?
If you want to do it, no problem.
Yeah, but we need all the information from you.
No problem.
All right, cool. Anything else you want to...
There's a lot that I feel we've left untouched here. A lot.
Like he mentioned, he doesn't want to make big investments on the ground in Zambia, but would you like to maybe invest in a podcast?
Maybe a podcast.
Maybe a podcast. Nothing big, nothing hectic.
Nothing big. Yeah.
Just a $50,000.
Only. We're not asking for much, Donovan.
Yeah.
We don't ask for too much. We're not greedy fellas.
Yeah. We'll ask Dingani. I'm sure he can support.
Is there anything that you feel we left out that you might have wanted to cover?
So just in saying, like, I'll repeat what I said yesterday on Simon's show. There's still people in the system who don't mean well. And those people, some of them are from the new administration, some of them are from the old administration. These people are frustrating the efforts that the current government or the president and his administration are making to improve the lives of the most vulnerable Zambians and all Zambians at large. But as long as these people are still in the system and no steps have been taken to essentially remove them from the system, things will never change. And it's not like these people are not known. These people are known. There's enough information on everyone. And I think that our President Hichilema, needs to take the approach that Donald Trump has taken. I know the president probably doesn't want to seem like he's going after bad actors because for a number of reasons. But it looks like it might look like he's going against or after people who worked with the previous government. But if the people who worked in the previous government are frustrating what the president is doing now, then those people shouldn't be in his government. And as an example, the president should just look at what Donald Trump is doing in America with Elon Musk and
Patrick Bet-David.
Well, I don't think Trump is the right example because we've got Matt Gaetz, who he wants as the AG, and these guys.
No, but I don't mean it from that perspective. I mean it from the perspective of where he's just going to fire people on day one. You know what I mean? They know who the bad guys are, and he's pledged to fire them on day one.
Matt Gaetz with the sexual assault charges still on, yeah?
Yeah, it's still on. And I don't know if Trump is the best example because here's my theory on Trump. And I don't want to digress because there's a point that you're making. I honestly feel that Elon Musk has got an agenda that he personally wants to push. And the only way he's able to do that is to cozy up to Donald so that he's able to get whatever it is that he needs. There's clips where Donald was actually saying, I can get Elon Musk to kneel down and kiss my shoes if that would mean him getting a deal. And Elon Musk used to say all kinds of horrible things about Trump. But I feel this guy's extremely smart. He's got an agenda that he wants to push, which I don't think Trump sees now. And by the time Trump realizes this,
if you were in Elon's position, wouldn't you do the same?
Nope.
So Elon is in the exact same situation I was in. The only difference is they never stole his money. They stole mine. So the difference is that when Biden came into power, Biden credited the General Motors for being the best EV manufacturer in the United States, when in reality the game changer here was Tesla. So from the very beginning, Biden was against Elon Musk. And if I was Elon Musk, I would do exactly what he did and supported Donald Trump. That's number one. Number two, there's another element to this. The Democrats in the United States support an agenda where you have gender reassignment for kids. So if your kid...
That is not true. That's the disinformation that Trump kept peddling.
No, I live in America, so I'm telling you what I see. So I'm not a Democrat, I'm not a Republican, I'm neither of those things. I supported Barack Obama when he was running for president.
An independent party
and I supported Donald Trump when he ran for president now. I don't agree with many things that Donald Trump says, but there is kids in the United States who have been taken away from their parents because the parents don't agree with giving them puberty blockers or gender reassignments. And I'm talking about like 7-year-old kids. So if your kid goes to school and says that I feel like a girl today, if he's a boy, they're gonna, without the parents' consent, they will start to give your kids puberty blockers and give them information on how they can change their gender. In America, you're not allowed to drink alcohol till you're 21. You're not allowed to drive.
Your gender at 7.
I mean, that's ridiculous.
And if Trump has his way, those kids will not be there because he wants to leave abortion up to the state. And if you know anything about the marginalized community, black people, for example, black women have got a 2 to 3 chances of dying giving birth. The communities they live in, they don't have proper health care. So if you buy an abortion, they don't have the money to fly to a different state to get an abortion there. Yeah. So I feel like more black women will die as a result of this. Yeah. So there's quite a lot.
The truth is, it doesn't only affect the black community. It impacts them the most, and that's probably because of the numbers of demographics.
Of course.
But they're not the only ones who are affected. There's a lot of white women who are affected by this. And I'm not supporting Donald Trump here. That's not what I'm trying to do. But the black community came out in large numbers to support Donald Trump.
No, that's not true.
So if
that's not true. I saw the exit polls. More white men supported Donald Trump.
Yeah, no, but you have to understand, you have to look at the demographics. The black community in America only makes up 5% of the community.
True.
But if you look at the percentage, a large percentage of black,
that's true,
the
actually.
black vote voted for Donald Trump.
Yep.
You know?
So right now I am looking at the exit polls. 86% of right there.
86%.
You see that?
White. Yeah.
Black people.
Yeah, voted for Kamala Harris and 12% for Donald Trump. Yeah, so I'm not quite sure where that.
Also, what are you looking at that on? Because you can't really trust legacy media anymore, you know, and that's why podcasts are taking over, because legacy media lies. Like, I don't
That is true.
read anything from legacy media because it's all a lie. There's an agenda behind everything.
Yeah,
You know?
yeah.
we're looking
I
forward
know
to
we
hosting the
digress a
president here
little.
as well.
You say what?
We're looking forward to hosting the president here as well. We're hoping he's learned something from Donald Trump, and he can do the same here, coming onto a podcast before the media. You know what I mean?
I think he will. Yeah.
Yeah, he
if you
should.
reach out to
He
him,
should.
I'm sure he will.
He should.
One thing that I'll tell you is that I saw this yesterday, and the reason why I'm happy is, Donovan, for the longest time, the people that watched our podcast, whenever I looked at the stats, for the longest time, for over 2 years, were not subscribed. So there were people that would just gone to YouTube, type in the name of our podcast, and begin to watch the episode. Did you see the latest stats?
I saw the email pop up last night. I didn't quite open it.
As of the last 2 months, 60% of the people that have watched our podcast are
Our
subscribed.
subscribers. Oh, that's good. That's a good turn.
Congratulations. That's
Turn
good.
around. Thank you so much.
So that actually shows that these are people that return viewers
Yeah.
that have hit the subscribe button. So whenever they get the notification, they actually do watch the episode. So only 30% are not subscribed. So this is your chance. Just hit the subscribe whenever you get a notification every Tuesday at 3. Tune in.
Donovan.
I also have an appeal to make. I believe in fairness, right? Like, I believe that everyone should be heard. And the same way I'm coming here making accusations against Shawe Fawaz, Kingsley Chanda, Morgan Mukwasa, you guys should have them. I mean, host them and let them come and explain their side of the story.
Do you have Shawi's number?
I'll reach
you.
out to Shawi.
You got his number?
I'll call him this evening. Yeah.
Yeah.
You got his number?
No, it's easy to find. I know who to call.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so let them come and explain to you what their version is, you know? I'm very curious to see what they're going to explain to you.
I was in the same class with his wife. She was my desk mate.
You were in the same class as Shawa's wife.
Yes.
She was your desk mate.
In primary school, yeah.
And another thing that I think we didn't touch upon is during that entire time that, so from 2019, I couldn't come back to Zambia. I was being intimidated by certain people in government. One of the people that was involved in this thing with regard to me not being able to come back was the Minister of Home Affairs at the time, Stephen Kampyongo. On my initial trip back to Zambia, they actually seized my passport at the airport and asked me to report to the immigration headquarters. They were meant to deport me. So if they couldn't murder me, they were going to deport me. So they had two things happening at the same time. So, I mean, this story...
Deport you to where?
America.
To the United
You got
States.
citizenship there now?
I'm a U.S. citizen, yeah. So I have dual nationality. But
great.
I'm a Zambian. Why are you deporting me?
Doesn't
I was
make
born
sense.
Here,
Yeah.
You know? If the government has failed to deport Shawi, who was never born in Zambia, I mean, he was born in Lebanon. During Monawasa's time, he tried to deport Shawi. And when they got to the airport in South Africa, Shawi started screaming in the airport that he was a Zambian. And because he created such a fracas at the airport, they didn't allow him on the flight. But the government, there has been a previous government that has tried to deport him. And that just speaks about against his character. You know,
Deport him where to?
Back to Lebanon. He's Lebanese.
Right.
He's not a Zambian, but he's a Zambian through naturalization, right? Like, so he was never born in Zambia. So if I'm a Zambian and you're trying to deport me, how can a foreigner come here and you fail to deport him and you try and deport a Zambian? So these are the things that people in the offices that make decisions on behalf of Zambians on a daily basis need to ensure that things like this can never happen. I mean, I don't even want to think about whether this has happened to someone else, you know? But yes, I thought that was an important point to raise.
Great.
Interesting.
That they had deportation orders.
Donovan, thanks a lot for coming through.
Wait, hold on. I want to give Gob an
disclaimer.
instruction. Gob, at the beginning of this episode,
Allow me to say it.
You know where
Allow
it
me to
says,
say it. Allow me to say
please.
it. The views and opinions expressed by our guests do not represent those of the podcast, Elson and I. These are the opinions and views of Donovan Gray. Thank you. Donovan, thanks for coming through.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
You see how we read each other's minds? We're wearing the same shirt.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Right.
We're wearing the
We,
same
we
shirt.
think exactly the same, right?
This was totally unplanned.
Yeah.
Totally unplanned.
That's good.
It always is every single time.
Yeah, no, that's
It
good.
It kind
lot,
of feels
yeah.
like we just run into each other and we're wearing almost
To the next
exactly the
episode,
same
remember
thing.
to click on the subscribe button and support the people that support us. Enjoy Brothers Mocktail and of course subscribe to Showmax right now and our channel.